North Korea is the easiest country on earth to lie about, because the weirder the story sounds, the faster we believe it. And this video breaks down 40 lies about North Korea that millions of people accepted as facts, even though many of them came from satire, mistranslations, and pure internet nonsense. 1. North Korea officially announced they discovered a real unicorn lair. You probably pictured a magical horse with a sparkly horn frolicking near the DMZ while eating rainbow cotton candy. The internet went wild laughing at how the regime had finally lost its marbles and started living in a fantasy novel. But actually, the joke is on us because we are terrible at translating stuff. They found a site linked to a kirin, which is a mythical deer creature from ancient legends that barely resembles a pony. They were trying to prove their capital city has ancient historical roots, and not that they are opening a magical petting zoo. It turns out the Western media just saw a weird word and immediately assumed North Korea was hiding a secret stash of mythical creatures instead of just being boringly obsessed with ancient history like every other nation. 2. Kim Jong-il kidnapped a famous director just to make a communist version of Godzilla. This sounds like the plot of a bad spy movie, but it is 100% historical fact from the 70s. The dictator was a huge fan of movies and decided his country needed a blockbuster, so he snatched a South Korean director and his wife. They were forced to make a movie called Pulgasari about a giant iron-eating monster that helps the peasants fight a feudal king. It is basically a rubber suit monster movie with a heavy dose of anti-capitalist preaching. The fact that a world leader committed an international kidnapping just to produce a B-movie is the ultimate proof that truth is stranger than fiction, and also that he really needed a Netflix subscription. 3. The state media supposedly claimed they landed a 17-year-old astronaut on the sun. A few years ago, the internet exploded with a story that North Korea had sent a boy to the sun, and he traveled at night to avoid getting burned. It sounds like the logic of a 5-year-old who just learned what fire is, but millions of adults shared the story thinking the regime was actually that stupid. The truth is that the story was a satirical article from a comedy website in Ireland and had absolutely nothing to do with North Korean news. It is honestly embarrassing that we are so ready to believe they are dumb enough to land on a star while we are the ones falling for a joke that is biologically impossible. It proves that when it comes to North Korea, we will believe literally anything, even if it defies the laws of physics and common sense. 4. The state media proudly reported that Kim Jong-un was named the sexiest man alive. A few years back, the Chinese press and North Korean propaganda ran a story that an American website had crowned their leader as the ultimate heartthrob. The hilarious part is that the source was The Onion, which is a satirical comedy site, and they completely missed the joke. They praised his devastatingly handsome round face and boyish charm, while the rest of the world laughed until their sides hurt. It is the ultimate ate the onion moment where their desire to be praised by the West blinded them to the fact that they were being roasted. It turns out that having nuclear weapons does not help you understand sarcasm or dry humor. 5. Kim Jong-il was the brilliant mastermind who invented the burrito. According to some wild reports, the late leader did not just run a country, but also spent his spare time acting like a culinary genius in a tall white hat. State media claimed he created the wheat wrap to feed the people, as if nobody in Mexico had ever thought of rolling meat inside dough before 2011. It is the kind of ego trip that makes you wonder if he also claimed to invent gravity or the color blue. The reality is that they just wanted a patriotic backstory for street food, so they pretended the supreme leader had a divine snack epiphany. It is hilarious to imagine a dictator stressing over the perfect ratio of salsa to meat. But that is the level of storytelling they use to make sure the history books give credit to one family for literally everything. 6. Wearing blue denim jeans is a crime that will get you thrown in prison. The myth is that if you strut around Pyongyang in a pair of Levi's, the fashion police will tackle you for supporting American imperialism. While it is true that blue denim is frowned upon because it symbolizes the enemy, wearing black jeans is totally acceptable. It is a hilarious distinction where the color of your pants determines your political loyalty, as if dye has a moral compass. Tourists wear them all the time and nobody tackles them. But for locals, it is just a bad fashion move that screams, "You love capitalism." It is less about a law and more about social pressure, but the idea that fabric can be treasonous is a special kind of crazy that we just love to believe. 7. Kim Jong. Il picked up a golf club for the first time and immediately humiliated Tiger Woods. The story goes that in 1994, the dear leader played his first ever round of golf and shot a world record 38 under par, including 11 holes in one. It is the kind of score you would get if you were using a cheat code in a video game, but state media reported it as a total fact to prove his superhuman coordination. The funny part is that this likely came from a poor scorekeeper who was marking down how many strokes over par he was, but the propaganda machine turned it into a miracle. Imagine being the poor caddy who has to nod along while the guy misses the ball and claims it went into the hole by magic. It is the ultimate fish story, except instead of a big fish, it is a tiny ball and a guy with a superiority complex. 8. Their space agency NASA stole their logo directly from NASA. When North Korea unveiled the logo for their National Aerospace Development Administration, the entire world did a double take because it looked exactly like the American version. It has the same blue globe and white lettering, and even the swoosh ring, which makes it look like a cheap knockoff you would buy at a flea market. The best part is that NASA literally means nothing in Spanish, which is the perfect accidental joke for a space program that barely gets anything off the ground. It is like they copied the homework of the smartest kid in class, but forgot to change the name at the top, and now everyone knows they are plagiarizing the cosmos. 9. The government solved the food shortage by breeding giant mutant rabbits. This sounds like the plot of a horror movie where the animals take over the world, but it was a real plan called the Giant Rabbit Project. They imported massive bunnies from Germany that were the size of dogs, thinking they would breed fast enough to feed the nation. The lie is that it was a brilliant scientific success, but the rumor is that the leaders just ate the initial batch at a banquet, and the program fell apart. It is a hilarious example of trying to use cartoon logic to solve complex economic problems. They essentially thought they could Bugs Bunny their way out of a famine, but ended up just having a really weird petting zoo for dinner and learning absolutely nothing about agriculture. 10. The regime told its citizens that North Korea won the World Cup against Brazil. You definitely saw that viral clip where a news anchor supposedly announced their team beat America and China to become champions of the universe. We all pointed and laughed at how gullible the North Korean people must be to believe such a ridiculous lie. But here is the plot twist, because the video was a complete fake made by some random prankster on the internet. The voiceover was wrong and the lip sync was terrible, but we believed it instantly because we love a good story about crazy dictators. The irony is absolutely thick because while we were mocking them for consuming fake news, we were literally doing the exact same thing. It turns out you do not need a state propaganda machine to trick people. You just need a funny video and an audience that wants to giggle at absurdity. 11. The massive Rugyong Hotel is actually a secret supervillain lair or a missile silo in disguise. For decades, the 105-story pyramid stood unfinished in the middle of the capital, looking like a concrete spaceship that crashed and ran out of money. Western tourists love to spread rumors that it is hollow or filled with secret weapons because it looks so creepy and ominous. The reality is much funnier because it is just a classic case of running out of cash during a construction project. They started building the world's tallest hotel in the 80s and then just sort of forgot to finish it for 30 years. It is essentially the world's largest lawn ornament, and a constant reminder that maybe you should check your bank account before you try to build a pyramid in the modern age. 12. Official biographies claimed Kim Jong-un learned to drive a car at age 3. You have to appreciate the sheer audacity of telling people that a toddler in a diaper was parallel parking a sedan better than most adults. The propaganda writers clearly forgot that 3-year-olds cannot even reach the pedals, let alone steer a vehicle without crashing into a tree. The story also claimed he was winning yacht races at the age of 9, which makes him sound like a bizarre action hero from a bad cartoon. It is the kind of lie that is so obvious it becomes comedy gold, because they expect people to nod along and agree that their leader was born with the driving skills of a professional racer. It is just a clumsy attempt to build a mythology around him, but it ends up sounding like a toddler bragging on the playground. 13. North Korea is actually a secret hippie paradise where marijuana is legal and sold in grocery stores. You might have heard rumors on Reddit that the Hermit Kingdom is the weed capital of the world because they do not classify pot as a drug. It paints a hilarious picture of strict soldiers chilling out with a joint, but sadly, it is just a misunderstanding of botany. What they have is industrial hemp, which is used for making towels and oil, and will definitely not get you high no matter how much you smoke. Tourists who went there looking for a party were probably very disappointed when they realized the only thing getting baked was the bread. It is another case of the internet wanting North Korea to be weirdly cool, but it is actually just strict and boring. 14. There is a widespread belief that every teacher must play the accordion. The rumor is that to get a teaching license, you have to master the squeeze box, so you can lead students in patriotic songs at a moment's notice. It paints a hilarious picture of a country that is secretly run by a giant polka band, where math class is interrupted by mandatory folk music. While the accordion was historically called the people's instrument because it is portable and loud, it was never a legal requirement for every educator. They liked it because it does not require electricity, which is convenient when the power goes out. But the idea of a national accordion mandate is just a funny myth. It is just a popular hobby that got blown out of proportion, like saying every American owns a banjo. 15. The leaders are magical beings who do not have to use the bathroom like us mortals. This is one of the most famous myths that North Korean biographies claimed Kim Jong-il did not defecate or urinate because he was just too perfect for toilets. It sounds like something a toddler would make up to get out of potty training, but people actually believe this was official doctrine. The truth is likely a bit more boring and involves metaphorical language about his purity getting lost in translation. This myth is often exaggerated in Western retellings to make them look crazier, but it is way funnier to imagine a guy walking around holding it in for 60 years because he is too proud to admit he ate a bad burrito. It is biology versus propaganda, and somehow the propaganda is winning the battle of stupidity and plumbing. 16. The North Korean won is the only currency that matters to the people. We assume they pay for things with paper money like normal folks, but for a long time the real king of the economy was the choco pie. When these marshmallow snacks were given to factory workers in joint industrial zones, they became a legendary black market currency. People were literally trading snacks for services like it was a prison cafeteria economy. It is absolutely wild to imagine a society where a box of chocolate-covered marshmallows is more stable and valuable than the government-issued cash. The regime eventually got so jealous of the choco pie popularity that they tried to ban them, which is the pettiest war on sugar in human history. 17. They play basketball exactly like the rest of the world does. You might think a hoop is a hoop, but the former dictator decided the NBA rules were too boring and rewrote the rulebook to make it more like a chaotic video game. In North Korea, a slam dunk is worth 3 points, and if you make a swish without touching the rim, you get 4 points, which is honestly a mechanic that belongs in Mario hoops. They also deduct a point if you miss a free throw, which is just cruel and unusual punishment for bad athletes. It is funny that they love the sport so much they had to customize it to fit their need for drama, proving that even in sports, they cannot just follow the rules everyone else agreed on decades ago. 18. There is a beautiful city right on the border that is completely fake and empty. Kijongdong is known as the Peace Village in the north, but everyone else calls it the Propaganda Village because it is basically a Hollywood set. For decades, the buildings had lights on timers and painted on windows to make it look like a bustling paradise to lure defectors from the south. It is like a ghost town designed by a theater kid with an unlimited budget. They even built a massive flagpole that was essentially a measuring contest with the South to see who had the bigger stick. It is a hilarious attempt to show off prosperity, but it just ends up looking like the world's most expensive and lonely model train set that nobody gets to play with. 19. Kim Jong-il was supposedly the greatest author in human history. The state propaganda machine claims that during his university years, he wrote over 1,500 books in a span of just 3 years. If you do the math, that means he was cranking out more than one book every single day, including weekends and holidays. He was basically the human equivalent of a chatbot before computers even existed. Most college students struggle to write a 10-page essay without crying. But this guy was allegedly publishing entire libraries of genius literature while also partying. It is a hilarious lie because anyone who has ever written anything knows that writing that much is physically impossible, unless your books are just pages of random letters or scribbles. 20. There are absolutely zero cars on the roads of North Korea. We all know the classic image of a 12-lane highway that is completely empty except for one guy sweeping dust and maybe a stray chicken. For years, people thought the entire country was just a giant sidewalk where cars were as rare as truthful news reports. But if you look at the capital today, you will see actual traffic jams, which ruins the whole ghost town vibe. A bunch of wealthy elites and taxi drivers are clogging up the streets with imported rides that definitely are not supposed to be there. It is pretty funny that we still imagine them riding bicycles everywhere when the reality is they are dealing with road rage just like the rest of us. The roads in the countryside are still dirt tracks, but the idea that the whole nation is walking everywhere is a myth that ran out of gas years ago. 21. There are absolutely no elections held in the country whatsoever. We tend to think of the regime as a place where voting is a foreign concept, like avocado toast or freedom of speech. The truth is they actually hold elections every 5 years, and they brag about having a 100% voter turnout, which is impressive until you realize there is only one name on the ballot. It is not an election, it is a census, where you are forced to show up and drop a paper in a box to prove you are obedient. It is the most suspense-free election night in history because nobody is biting their nails waiting for the results on television. Calling it an election is like calling a robbery a donation, but they stick to the script to pretend they are a democracy. 22. North Korea uses the same calendar as the rest of the civilized world. You might think it is currently the 21st century over there, but you would be mathematically wrong. They actually use their own Juche calendar, which resets the clock to the birth of their founder Kim Il-sung in 1912. So, according to their government, they are living in the year 100, and something which honestly explains why their technology looks so outdated. It is the ultimate act of narcissism to force an entire nation to count time based on when your grandpa was born. Imagine if Americans had to write the date based on when George Washington dropped his first mixtape. It is confusing for everyone involved, but it definitely helps keep the country isolated in its own little time bubble. 23. North Korea claimed to have created a miracle drug that cures AIDS, Ebola, and cancer all at once. State propaganda broadcasts officially announced this medical breakthrough called Kumdang-2, which sounds like a rejected energy drink from the 90s. They said it was made from rare ginseng grown in fertilizer mixed with gold, which is scientifically nonsense but sounds expensive. It is the snake oil pitch to end all snake oil pitches. While the rest of the world is spending billions on medical research, they apparently solved every disease known to man with some fancy root vegetables and positive thinking. It is hilarious that they expect us to believe they have a magical potion in a country where the hospitals often lack running water and electricity, but hey, maybe the gold dust does the trick. 24. Their military uses advanced futuristic technology to communicate their terrifying threats. We see the missiles and the parades and assume they have a command center that looks like the Death Star with holograms and lasers. In reality, as recently as a few years ago, they were literally sending threats to South Korea using a fax machine. You have to appreciate the commitment to vintage office equipment. Nothing strikes fear into the heart of an enemy like the screeching sound of a dial-up connection followed by a blurry piece of paper that says, "We will destroy you." It is hard to take a declaration of war seriously when it arrives on the same machine your grandma uses to send you outdated cookie recipes, and it proves their communication strategy is stuck in the era of floppy disks. 25. A double rainbow appeared, and a new star was born when the leader arrived. The official biography of Kim Jong-il states that his birth was so important that winter turned into spring, and a star illuminated the sky to celebrate. It makes him sound like a Disney princess who has magical control over the weather, which is a bold claim for a guy born in a guerrilla camp. The Soviet records show he was actually born in a boring village in Russia while his dad was hiding out, but that does not sound very heroic. So they rewrote history to make nature itself a fanboy of the dictator. It is hilarious that they expect adults to believe the weather forecast changed out of respect for a baby, but that is the level of fairy tale logic they use to keep the family in power. 26. The commuters on the Pyongyang subway are actually paid actors. This is a favorite conspiracy theory among tourists who think the entire country is a giant movie set designed just for them. The idea is that the government hires thousands of people to ride the trains back and forth all day just to make the city look busy and functional. While the regime loves a good show, the logistics of paying extra for rush hour pretending are ridiculous even for them. These are real people just trying to get to work and probably wondering why a bunch of foreigners in cargo shorts are staring at them suspiciously. It is a hilarious example of main character syndrome, where visitors think an entire nation exists solely to trick them into believing that subways are real. 27. The regime absolutely despises everything about American culture with a burning passion. You would think that owning anything from the land of the free would get you sent to the gulag, but the leadership has a massive crush on the NBA. The former dictator was obsessed with Michael Jordan and actually owned VHS tapes of every single game he ever played to study them like religious texts. It is hilariously hypocritical that they spend all day threatening to destroy the United States, but then go home to watch the Chicago Bulls dunk on people. They even invited Dennis Rodman over for a playdate, which is the weirdest crossover episode in history. It turns out that their hatred for capitalism stops the moment a basketball enters the room, because apparently ball is life, even in a totalitarian dictatorship where slam dunks are more important than ideology. 28. Every single man is required by law to have the Kim Jong-un haircut. This story pops up all the time, claiming that the fashion police will arrest you if you do not shave your sides and rock the ambitious trapezoid look. It sounds like the ultimate bad hair day nightmare, but it is completely made up. In reality, nobody actually wants that haircut because it looks kind of goofy and is associated with unpopular folks. Most men just get a standard boring cut that looks like something your grandpa would wear to a library. The government does ban long hair or wild styles, but they do not force everyone to clone the leader. Honestly, trying to look exactly like the guy who runs the secret police seems like a terrible way to fly under the radar, so it makes sense that people prefer to keep their hairstyles generic and safe. 29. Kim Jong-il was just a guy with bad fashion sense and a weird potbelly. We look at his trademark khaki zip-up suits and oversized sunglasses and think he looked like a retired mechanic who got lost on his way to a garage sale. But the state media actually claimed he was a global fashion icon and that people in Paris were burning their designer clothes to copy his look. The lie was that French fashion runways were packed with models wearing drab communist jumpsuits because the dear leader was just that stylish. It is the kind of delusion that comes from never having anyone tell you that you look ridiculous. He really thought he was the Kanye West of geopolitics, when in reality he just looked like a human teabag that had been left in the cup for too long. 30. Alcohol is strictly banned and the entire country is completely sober. We tend to picture North Korea as a strict monastery, where fun is illegal and everyone drinks only water and tea. The truth is that booze is actually cheaper than bottled water, and North Koreans love to drink soju, which is a rice liquor that tastes like rubbing alcohol and regrets. The state actually tolerates it because it keeps people happy and slightly distracted, which is great for managing a population. There are no laws against public drinking, so you will see people having picnics and knocking back shots in the park. It turns out that living in a totalitarian state is a lot more tolerable when you have a steady supply of cheap liquor to help you forget about the lack of electricity. 31. North Korea is a communist state following the footsteps of the Soviet Union. We always hear them called communists on the news, so we assume they are all reading Karl Marx and sharing everything equally. The funny thing is, they actually removed all references to communism from their constitution years ago because it was too modern for them. They follow Juche, which basically translates to, "We do whatever we want, and you cannot help us." It is less like a communist brotherhood and more like an absolute monarchy where the crown is passed down to the son who has the best cheeks. If old communist leaders could see the country today, they would probably be very confused as to why one family owns literally everything while claiming to be for the people. 32. The eldest son of the dictator was caught on a dangerous top-secret spy mission in Japan. For years, people thought Kim Jong-nam was sneaking into Tokyo to steal nuclear secrets or orchestrate a master plan for global domination. The embarrassing truth is that he got arrested at the airport wearing a fake gold necklace because he really wanted to visit Tokyo Disneyland. Imagine being the heir to a nuclear-powered dynasty and risking your entire inheritance just to high-five Mickey Mouse and ride Space Mountain. It is the ultimate rich kid tantrum that went wrong, and it cost him the throne. He literally lost the chance to rule a country because he could not resist the urge to buy a pair of mouse ears, which is honestly the funniest reason to get fired from a dictatorship. 33. People assume the country is a digital black hole with zero internet access. We tend to think they are living in the Stone Age, sending smoke signals or carrier pigeons to communicate. The reality is they have a domestic intranet called Kwangmyong, which is basically a fenced-in version of the web where fun goes to die. It allows citizens to access state-approved news and digital libraries, but you definitely cannot check your email or watch videos of cats falling off tables. It is like being stuck on a corporate network from the 90s, where the only website you can visit is the boss's blog. So technically they are online, but it is the most boring and restricted version of the internet imaginable, designed to make sure nobody accidentally learns what is happening in the real world. 34. The leader is an expert in literally every single job on the planet. This is known as on-the-spot guidance, where Kim Jong-un visits a factory or a farm and points at things while taking notes. The myth is that he is giving brilliant technical advice to the workers, whether they are making lubricant or raising catfish. It does not matter that he has never worked a day in his life in a factory. He apparently just knows more than the engineers who have been doing it for 30 years. It creates this hilarious image of him walking into a bakery and telling the bakers that bread needs to be baked, which they dutifully write down in their little notebooks as if it is a divine revelation from the god of toast. 35. Americans are depicted as literal monsters with giant noses. If you look at North Korean propaganda posters, you will see US soldiers drawn as wolves or goblins with noses so big they could smell a capitalist from a mile away. They tell children that Americans are scary creatures who survive on snow and cold coffee and spend all day plotting to destroy the world. It is a cartoonish level of villainy that would seem over the top even for a Saturday morning cartoon. The funniest part is that they genuinely believe we are all miserable and poor, while we are over here believing crazy myths about them. It is a classic case of projection where they paint us as the bad guys to distract from the fact that they have no food. 36. The government proudly boasts a literacy rate of exactly 100%. They want the world to believe that every single citizen from the remote mountains to the capital can read complex literature like a university professor. It is a statistic that is statistically impossible because even the most advanced countries have people who struggle to read a stop sign. The trick is that their definition of literacy is extremely flexible and historically just meant being able to write the name of the leader without messing up. It is basically the educational equivalent of getting a participation trophy just for showing up. They lowered the bar so much that you would have to dig a hole to get under it, which is a great way to get perfect scores without actually teaching anyone anything useful. 37. The world loves the leaders so much we named flowers after them. There are two official flowers called the Kimilsungia and the Kimjongilia, which are just fancy begonias and orchids. The regime tells the people that these flowers were created by famous botanists who were so overcome with admiration for the dictators that they dedicated their life work to them. They even hold massive flower festivals where they claim the entire world sends these plants as a tribute to their greatness. It is deeply funny to imagine international diplomacy working through gardening as if world leaders are sending bouquets to Pyongyang to say sorry for the sanctions. It is basically botanical narcissism, where they believe even the plants are rooting for the regime. 38. the government officially banned sarcasm to protect the feelings of the leader. A few years ago, news outlets reported that Kim Jong-un had outlawed irony because he was tired of people making snarky comments about his regime. It paints a picture of a country where rolling your eyes is a felony, and telling a joke requires a permit from the Supreme Court. In reality, it is pretty much impossible to ban a tone of voice unless you install microphones in everyone's throat. The report was likely an exaggeration of a lecture given to local officials about keeping their mouth shut, but the internet loved the idea of a sarcasm police force. It is funny to think about a cop arresting you for saying "nice hat" in a weird way, but honestly, the regime has bigger problems than policing dry humor and passive-aggressive compliments. 39. The government supposedly ended the concept of nighttime for everyone. There is a famous satellite image showing North Korea as a pitch-black void compared to the blazing lights of South Korea and China. While the picture is real, it led to the myth that they simply do not have electricity at all. The truth is they have power, but it is rationed carefully, usually for statues of the leaders and military sites. But recently, solar panels have become a massive trend, with people hanging them off balconies to charge their phones. So while the country looks dark from space, the people are actually creating their own little grid, which is a surprisingly capitalist solution to a government failure. 40. North Korea released a study claiming they are the second happiest country on Earth. According to their own researchers, China was number 1, and North Korea was a close second while the United States was ranked dead last in happiness. It is the kind of statistic that makes you laugh out loud because it is so obviously rigged. They expect us to believe that people living in a freezing police state with no electricity are having a better time than people at Disney World. It is the ultimate participation trophy where they just decided they are winners because they said so. The only thing happier than a North Korean citizen, according to this survey, is the guy who invented the lie in the first place, hoping he would not get fired. Be honest, if you believed even one of these lies, then you are part of the reason they spread. So don't comment. Which one was craziest? Comment. Which one actually fooled you and how long you believed it? And if this made you uncomfortable in a good way, hit like and subscribe because the internet will keep lying and someone has to keep calling it out.